You're listening to Get Hired Up, the podcast for next-level executives and board nominees, the fun and informative podcast with host Maureen Farmer, CEO and founder of Westgate Executive Branding and Career Consulting. Westgate is a 100% independent premier executive branding and career services firm for high-profile leaders who are serious about navigating the hidden job market to get hired up. And we especially love helping successful executives make exciting career moves that let them be leading heroes at home, not just at the office. So if any of these challenges are ahead for you, visit us at westgatecareercoaching.com.
Today, I'm joined by Anita Toth, where we discuss the major impact of customer churn on SaaS companies and the one single thing that can move the needle on your revenues and why the Net Promoter Score is not appropriate for B2B companies.
This is Maureen Farmer, and it's my pleasure to welcome Anita Toth, the Chief Churn Crusher at Anita Toth Incorporated, her consulting agency. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Anita uses her 20 years of qualitative research experience from 2 world-class universities to guide B2B SaaS companies to crush their churn and increase their net profits from the bottom up. The Churn Crusher system helps scaling SaaS companies assess how they are doing against 25 different churn factors. The Churn Crusher system helps clients gain valuable access to previously hidden data. I can't wait to hear more about that. The result is that clients now make confident, churn-crushing decisions that reduces their risk of making expensive wrong decisions while simultaneously increasing their profits. So welcome, Anita. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. I'm happy to be here.
So I have a million questions as usual. And I would like to start with talking a little bit about what a SaaS company is for the person who's listening who may not know, and a little bit about the universities where you did your research.
Absolutely. So SaaS actually is an acronym. It stands for Software as a Service. Your most popular ones are things like Netflix, Dropbox, anything where you pay either a monthly or annual recurring fee for for access to that particular piece of software.
And so you had 20 years of qualitative research. So tell us a little bit about that. What universities and what kind of research did you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at the University of Toronto. That's where I first started learning about qualitative research methods. In case people are wondering, it's everything from observational analysis to surveys, focus groups, and interviews. And that really rounds out what qualitative research methods are. And then I came to do my master's at McMaster University, where I was taking qualitative research methods at the graduate level, and then landed a job on September 10th, 2001. So nearly 20 years ago today for this recording, that I was in a research institute at McMaster University where we were looking at environment and health. So specifically how physical environments like buildings, streets, neighborhoods, all affected a person or population's health. And that's where we did the same things: observational analysis, surveys, focus groups, and interviews.
Well, that sounds fascinating. Can you give us a sense, just briefly, what kind of health issues are impacted by that infrastructure?
Absolutely. And it's things we don't even think of. So like my neighborhood here, it was built in an era where the cars ruled and there are no sidewalks. So when it's winter and we're in Canada, there's snow piled up on the side of the road and there's cars parked on the road. Well, suddenly it becomes really treacherous to walk. And for people who don't have access to a vehicle, this is just one added level of stress when you're walking along and having to really, really be aware of your environment in case somebody doesn't see you and they're driving and you're on the road and, perhaps it's a near miss. But when you're on a sidewalk, that cognitive load of having to look around constantly and see if you're safe, well, that's removed. So that's just one type of example that I think most people can get an idea of what it's like to walk on a sidewalk versus what it's like to walk on a road with no sidewalks.
Well, absolutely. I mean, your safety is in the hands of the driver, really.
It is.
If you're not careful. So that's really, really interesting. And I would like to know a little bit about the Churn Crusher system. and how that came about, how you got into your business, and the type of client or customer that you're serving now, Anita?
Okay, absolutely. So I love asking questions. I've been asking questions since I was a young kid. So this career path makes sense in terms of staying with that qualitative research theme. So the churn crusher system is essentially, we talk to customers. We talk to your customers in a standardized way. And many companies will say, oh yeah, well, we do surveys, we do NPS or CSAT, which is customer satisfaction. And that's all great. And those, especially the last two, NPS and CSAT, are standardized. But the surveys they send out are often all sorts of different people have agendas that go into these surveys. They can be too long sometimes. The questions are poorly worded and confusing. So what ends up happening is that customers, they just don't respond. They feel, survey fatigue. And I started, yeah, there it is. That. How many of us have gone, oh, great, another survey?
Can I just interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know what NPS is. I just learned that recently on another podcast. But for the person here who may not know what it means, Net Promoter Score, can you talk a little bit about that metric?
Absolutely. So NPS, as Maureen just mentioned, it actually was a system. So Net Promoter System, and it's now used commonly as Net Promoter Score, is when a singular question is asked: how likely are you to recommend to family and friends our either product or company? And there's a 10 points, 0 to 10 scale. And there's specific ways to go through and measure people's answers to it. But that's actually what it is. It's a lagging indicator. It's supposed to be used for, judging loyalty. So in some industries, it's very common to pull out an NPS and say our NPS is fantastic. It's 80, which is really great, and that indicates to us that we have high customer loyalty. So it becomes very, very important for some companies and in some industries to pull out this number as a way to compare to their competitors. Now, there are absolute benefits to NPS, and there's also some problems with it, particularly in a B2B setting. NPS was created for a direct to consumer. So it really doesn't translate so well when you're in a B2B environment, and an account might have several different stakeholders, decision makers, end users. So it depends on who is responding to that survey. Your responses may not really be accurate to what you're trying to learn.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you send out NPS scores, let's say, to some decision makers. Well, they have very different, again, it's asking how likely would you be to recommend, our product, our service, our company, to family and friends, or I've seen, friends and colleagues. Well, they may not at all, because it's not something that ever comes up for discussion. So they might be answering like, 0 or a 1. I'm not really going to recommend, because it's not something that I do in my normal course of conversations.
So that would be different from, say, for example, Netflix, where I've just watched a really great show and I've had great experience, and I recommend it to my sister. And
absolutely,
because that's a consumer product versus a SaaS product, B2B, might be in a completely different industry where, unless you're speaking to a colleague in the same industry, that question would not come up. And so are you saying that answer would be skewed because the 0 or 1 is not suggesting that the product is not good? It's suggesting that, that question really isn't relevant to my market or to my constituents. Is that, am I right?
And that's it. Exactly. The latter. It is often, again, am I going to sit down and recommend Windows 10 to you, Maureen, in the course of a normal conversation? Probably not.
No.
So, but I love it. Actually, I am. I am a PC user. I'm a proud PC user, not interested in Apple products. That's who I am. But we're not going to have a discussion about it. So my answer, the problem with a lot of these very short 1-question surveys, you lack context.
Right.
You have no idea why that person, who, by the way, in the NPS scoring system would be called a detractor.
Right.
You have no idea.
Right.
And that's this is where those hidden, we talk about, what is hidden in these churn factors in my churn crusher system. That's it. It's context. So when companies create these surveys, there's problems with the questions. They're poorly worded, they're confusing, and customers don't really see the value of taking their time, which they will never get back, to fill something out that helps the company, but doesn't necessarily directly help them. We can talk about that in a little bit, how to overcome that and actually get greater response rates for your surveys. I can talk to it. It's one thing in particular you can do, and it's crazy. You can go up to 80% response rates on surveys just from this one thing. So
okay, don't make me wait,
Maureen.
No, don't make me wait. I want to know now.
Okay, but let me go back and just finish this one thought, and then we'll get to that. Okay. So what it is context is hidden. So now you're getting your surveys, you're getting your NPS, you're getting whatever, other qualitative metrics you're looking at, or quantitative ones as well. And you have no idea why. So why are usage rates going down? Why is there low user adoption? Why aren't people signing up like they did 3 months ago? Why is this happening? And the only way you can find that out is to talk to your customers directly, versus what most of us do is we just sort of guess. And maybe we hear some anecdotes here and there that kind of bubble up from, support staff or product or maybe sales. And what ends up happening, though, is anecdotes are not data. You need to go through in a standardized way and speak to your customers to get data and start understanding the context that your customers are making their decisions. Why are they acting the way they are? What are they thinking? And how do they feel? Because surprise, surprise, despite what most people think, it's a feeling first that customers will base their decision to leave a company and stop being a customer. They will justify with things like price, budget, poor timing, didn't find value. But all of those things, the underpinning of it is all how they felt about their experience with your company.
And how do you draw that out with your system? How does that work versus, the stereotypical kind of automated survey type of thing? How is that different?
So again, the most popular are 2 surveys. So we go broad to start finding out, are the patterns that we have found in the customer interviews we do. We actually start with customer interviews first and do a small sample size of your customers. Then we want to see if those same patterns exist across your entire customer base or specific segments, depending on what it is that you're looking to find. So that's essentially what the system does. And then now there's one thing that we add, and this is what I was talking about, to raise participation by your customers in terms of surveys, in terms of engagement, in terms of participating in other things like focus groups or maybe customer advisory boards. What that is called closing the loop. Now, some people might know what it is, some people might not, but essentially, I think almost universally, all of us have submitted at some time a survey, and we took our time, which we can never get back, to help this company out, and then we hear nothing. So was it helpful? Was it not? Did they take what I wrote seriously? We have no clue. And what closing the loop does is gets back in touch with your customers to let them know. This is what we found when we interviewed or surveyed this particular customer segment who is just like you. We found 30% said that they were happy with the onboarding process. But interestingly, we found that 10% of our, best customers were also interested in this. And then you can add in either a couple of sentences like direct quotes. And the one thing that I really like to do, and this really elevates it, is to have either your team members, your senior management, or your C-suite, if you can, get even a sentence or two of their opinion on the findings. And you put that into whatever the communication is. Usually it's email, and close the loop that way. And then you tease what your next survey or interview or focus group or customer advisory board, whatever it is, your next round of qualitative research, you put that in and tease them that, hey, we would really like to hear your voice, because now you've just shown to them that we listen. This is what we found. And again, another added value is to say what happened as a result. So-and-so said this. This is how we responded in terms of action. And this is how it's helping our customers. And when you start showing, is all it takes is a few emails like this. It's remarkable that people will start realizing like, oh, you know what? I do want to participate in this, because they start becoming curious about what the responses are. Every single one of us is always comparing. It's subconscious, but we compare ourselves to other people. So we want to know, how does my company stack up to other companies that are very similar to me? Do they have the same problems? Are they finding the same solutions? And closing the loop emails like that helps them see that A, they're not alone, and B, the company is listening and values their opinion. And then the third thing it does is start increasing that loyalty, because we'll go back to it, those underpinnings, it's a feeling. I feel valued. I feel heard. I feel like they care. And that's all it is.
And those
just
are
a series of emails. Yeah.
And those are fundamental human needs.
Absolutely.
To feel heard, to feel seen. So I'd like to know, let's pick a company fictitiously, or one exemplar from your own company. And would it be, who are you engaging with these surveys? Is it the chief revenue officer? Is it who is actually participating in these surveys?
So it really depends on, for me, my clients and what they're looking to understand. If they're an earlier stage company, they might be looking to understand who their ideal customers are. It's quite surprising how, even some early stage, mid stage companies are still not fully dialed in. They might have the demographic or firmographic information, but they often don't understand the real subtleties. Again, how do these people or this particular group make decisions? How do they decide what is valuable to them and what isn't? What is their thinking just prior to their decision to no longer be a customer? Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff that you really want to dig deeply in. So it might be an end user. So in case of SaaS, that's who it might be. It might be, the person who's actually using the software. Maybe it's decision makers. Even for professional services in the onboarding process, you might want to go through and find out what the onboarding process was like, how it could be improved, how their expectations differed from what they thought they were getting in the sales process versus what it was like to actually be a customer. So it can be anybody, right from, the CEO right down to the end user. And it really, really depends on what questions my clients are looking to get answered. And that really drives then what methods we use to go about and find that information for them.
Do you find that some organizations are happy or want to leave a product or a service, but the opportunity cost of doing so is too, maybe not in their budget, or it's too intense, too intrusive, too disruptive, so they stay anyway, but they're still unhappy?
Absolutely. And it happens more frequently than you'd like to think. It's surprising. So there's really three customer groups you have. Every company has these. One are happy customers. These are companies, these are customers that are having a great experience with your company. They're finding value. They are loyal. They really like the product or service. And then you have the bigger group. And remember, this is like a sliding scale, down or up, depending on how you want to look at it, of those customers that are satisfied. And that's what you're describing, Maureen. They might be on the low end of satisfied versus customers that are like, yeah, I like it. Okay. I change a few things, all the way down to, well, you know what? We're not big fans, but it's just the switching costs are way too high. So we're going to stay where we are. And then you have your unhappy customers. And these are the ones that are really upset. They, generally their expectation of what was going to happen when they became a customer is quite different from the reality of being a customer. And these are the ones that are out the door. Either it's, even if the switching costs are high, they are willing to take that because they are so incredibly unhappy with their experience.
I have a colleague and a friend who just adopted a new payroll system, huge. And it took a long time to onboard and to, get past that really steep training learning curve. And I was speaking to her not that long ago, and she said, for the first 18 months, I was ready to fire the company. And now, after this huge onboarding and learning process, they're now happy. So I often wonder, and I've had the experience myself in my own business where, you have a new CRM or some new service, new SaaS product that you need for your business, but the frustration of bringing that new system into your organization is very, very painful. And sometimes the subscription is not renewed at all. You don't go beyond the first few rounds. And then, so in that scenario, when you have, I'm assuming at different stages of the product life cycle or the subscription life cycle, there's probably drop off early on, more so than in the middle. Would that be right? Or is it all over
Maureen, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you mentioned this, because it can be right from huge enterprise where it does take 18 months to go through the onboarding process because it is that complex, right down to something like super simple that maybe took you, just 25 minutes and
like your calendaring system that I am so frustrated with that will not synchronize with my calendar for some reason, no matter how hard I try. But, I don't bother going to a new service because I think, and then I've got to research it and then, start all over again. And that's just for a simple, a fairly simple investment in a subscription. So I can only well imagine what it's like at the enterprise level. Speaking of which, why don't you tell us a little bit about your ideal customer or client, however you refer to them, what they look like, what they need, and maybe some of the opportunities and challenges.
Absolutely. So again, I work with B2B SaaS companies. That is where I've located myself. I really like the SaaS world. I understand it the best. And I tend to work with either founders who come to me. They, again, churn. And the reason why I call it everything so focused on churn, chief churn crusher, even though it's a bit of a mouthful, it very quickly describes what we do. I help B2B SaaS companies crush churn, and churn is a key metric in SaaS. And so It's founders who come to me. The other group are, and I work primarily with, are customer success teams. So in SaaS companies, customer success, and I should say, is very different from customer support. Customer support is reactive. Customer success is proactive. So in many SaaS companies that I deal with, churn is one of their key metrics, as is net retention rate. So they come because churn is affecting their ability to grow and to be profitable. So they want to keep as many customers as possible. And they come to me often because they are unable to take on the scope of the qualitative research methods that they'd like to do. So whether that's, large scale surveys or doing focus groups or interviews. And so they come to my company for help with that. And it's not so much that they don't know how to interview or to run surveys. It's the analysis piece. Mm-hmm. It's how to pull out those patterns that are valuable to them so that they can be actionable. What are those actionable items that they're looking for? So that's really the part that they struggle with the most. Sure, anybody can create a few questions and send them out, just like anybody can cut their own hair. Right? Anybody can do it. But do you want like the bowl cut where literally you put a bowl on your head and just go around? Or are you interested in somebody that understands the needs of your hair, is going to style it to your liking so that you can feel good about, the haircut that you got? That's what I provide. The haircut that really looks good for you. It's tailored exactly to your needs. And really what I give in that context, in providing context, is visibility. So it's visibility into, again, what are the actions the customers are taking and why are they taking them, or why are they not taking them? What are they thinking? How did they make their decisions? And then lastly, how are they feeling? Because again, like you talked about, really frustrated by my calendar software, but for the time being, the pain isn't quite bad enough for you to look at other competitors. So that's what we provide. And then, of course, there's a big report at the end with those specific actionable items that then for customer success or the chief customer officer can then take to senior leadership meetings and present. And it's the voice of the customer is being heard at a much higher level. And then with actual, like we take those interviews and we take video snippets and we put them in the reports. So then you can actually hear the customer's voice. It's no longer anecdotal and it's no longer, just a few sentences about what we heard. There it is, the customer's actual voice telling you what their experience is like. And that it really pushes things like nothing else.
So I'm curious about the timeline between, you get together with an organization, do you collaborate with them on the questions, or do you come with a preset?
No, never preset.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Good. So we sit down because I need to, just like we're trying to get into like a deeper understanding of what the customers are thinking and feeling. Mm-hmm. It's the same with the companies. Often companies will come and say, okay, well, we're interested. Let's just take the ideal customer example. Well, we're interested in finding out who our ideal customers are. And then you ask them about segmentation, what kind of segmentation they have. Well, they kind of have some, but it's not that specific. You ask, are they looking to learn more about, what are the differences between their most profitable customers and their least profitable? Because maybe they are in that same segment. Why is one spending so much money with us where the other one isn't? Or why are support tickets so high with our, poor customers in the same segment, but are really great customers? We don't have that. So they're trying to get an idea, and as am I, of what it is that they're really trying to understand. And it's often tied. So we ask about strategic goals. What are their strategic goals for their quarter or for their year? so that we can really make sure that the questions we are asking tie directly back to that. And so, again, if they want actionable items that tie to their strategic goals, that's what we're looking to provide by the interview guide we create. The interview guide, the survey guide are those set of questions. So there's a lot of discussion in that first meeting to make sure we're really crystal clear on how we can help our clients best get that information that they're really seeking.
So I've got a couple of more questions that I'm really curious about. So one would be kind of on either ends of the spectrum here in terms of timeline. So I guess the first question would be, what is the presenting problem that you hear when a client picks up the phone to call you or email you or message you? What do they say? I'm losing revenues. What is the presenting problem typically? And the second question I have is, what is an example of an actionable item that's in that report?
So the presenting problem differs between if I'm dealing with founders. For them, this might be where something like NPS comes out. Their NPS score is really low. They're looking to increase it. Perhaps their customer acquisition costs are high. They're looking to bring those down. It tends to be a little more focused on the acquisition side, whereas for customer success, it's more around retention. How can we keep our customers longer? And then again, really having a better understanding of what are the differences between their customers, either in those customer segments, if they already have them, or just as a whole, like what are their customer segments? So they usually present with those two things. And I already forgot about your second question. That's why you should only ask Maureen one question at a time.
One question. That's right. You taught me that before. In fact, I remember that very, very clearly. I'm here thinking, okay, I'm sitting in my office. I'm here with my senior management team, and there's a report on my desk, and there's a list of, I don't know, a half a dozen or a dozen action items. What's an example of one of the most common action items that are in that report?
Right. So often, like let's go back to the onboarding process example, that there is something that, or a metric, again, churn, we talk about customers leaving, but boy, can it be sliced and diced a whole bunch of different ways. 30-day churn is very common metric, again, in SaaS companies. So this is when customers sign on, and then their 30-day churn rates could be very high, as much as like 28%. And then, of course, it drops off over time because the loyal customers stay. So an action item that might come out with this is looking at the customer journey again and seeing if the journey that's been previously mapped is accurate anymore, or does it need to be changed. So something like that. Another one is just, and again, around this onboarding process, is to see if the sales process is the sales team choosing the best customers for, that they're prospecting for, or are, however they go about and do this, are they just sort of taking anybody to hit quota by the end of the month? Right. So looking at that process, and that can be quite big. So some of the action items could be fairly small, even though remapping a customer journey can take quite some time. But then sometimes it really means looking at processes that have been in place for a very long time and questioning, does this model still work, or should we look to change it? Because if we want to retain more of our customers, maybe we have to look at the type of customers that we are getting and see if we can attract more of the customers that we really want, versus what a lot of companies do. And that's, take a whole bunch of those customers that become just satisfied, like we talked about, Maureen, like that sort of middle, it's okay, but I don't feel like leaving. So that might be an item as well. And then right even into marketing. So that ideal customer, what do they look like? What are their pain points? How is marketing playing a role in getting the correct leads or the best leads for sales? And then sales converts those to customers. And then those customers' expectations are much more dialed into what it's like to be an actual customer. The more dialed in those expectations are and their reality matches, the more likely they are to stay. So it could be anywhere, right to product. I didn't even talk about products. There was a reason for that, because that's a whole other ball game. But
Sure.
Again, actionable items around product, around features, friction within processes. It could be all sorts of things depending on, why the client came to speak with us in the first place.
So maybe you can come back another time and talk about the product, that perspective. I'd be very interested to learn more. I'm also very curious, and we won't have time today to discuss this, but I'm very curious about how, we talk about customer engagement. I like to also focus on, in my world, on employee engagement. And I'm sure there's a lot of comparisons between happy customers and happy employees. But that's a conversation for another time. And I do have one final question for you before we end the call. And what has surprised you most in your business so far?
Honestly, it's the reluctance of companies to actually want to look and truly listen to what their customers are saying.
Probably because they're too afraid to, maybe.
Well, listen to those actionable items that I just mentioned.
Right.
Who wants to look at their entire sales process and question it?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, and I get that. Oh, and it breaks my heart, because I'm going to actually, I came up with this the other day, and it's, what was it? Happy team, customers beam. So it's, if your employees are happy, then your customers are also going to be happy. But
right. We talked about this in the pre-call, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but getting there is a tough process. And it just breaks my heart, because I get that it's hard to look. I get that as soon as it's kind of the Wizard of Oz, you pull that curtain back, you're going to go, like, now what have we done? Like, so in many ways, I find that companies come, they want to know, but they put a limit in place. So they really say, well, we only want to know to this point, because we're only willing to make these types of changes. And unfortunately, there are a lot of surface level changes. And, I wish for their customers that they would be able to go deeper and realize, like, there's so much value. Like, the money is in the retention. Customers that stay with you, they're the ones that buy again and again. They're the ones that are referring. They're the ones that you can, upsell and cross-sell. Acquiring customers is so expensive, but it's easy. It is far easier than questioning, should we be doing this? We've been doing it this way for 15 or 20 years. It's hard. And that's really my ideal customers are the ones that are willing to look. They're willing to go, yep, we might hear things we don't want to hear. Yes, we realize that what comes out of this means we have to do extra work and change, but they want to retain those customers so badly. And it can be because that's their company value, or because they want to increase market share, that they're willing to do the work. Those are my ideal customers. So they're B2B SaaS, generally, mid-size, anywhere from sort of 10 million annual recurring revenue up to 50. But it's really that mindset, because those are the companies that are willing to say, yes, let's do this, even though it might be tough.
And they're probably the most profitable too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, the giant Salesforce net retention rate is crazy. They have primarily grown that company on retaining customers, not acquiring new ones. And if a behemoth like that can do it,
sure,
then why are other companies that are much smaller, why are they not looking at this? That's how Salesforce grew. It is on retention revenue and expanding it.
And an entire industry has been an outgrowth of that. I know a lot of organizations that are Salesforce trainers and Salesforce systems implementation groups and all kinds of things like that. To close off the call, I would like to thank you for joining me. It was fascinating. Maybe we can talk again another time. I would be delighted to do so. And anyone listening to this conversation today and they wanted to get in touch with you, Anita, how would they do that?
There's two ways. I'm really active on LinkedIn. In fact, that's probably the easiest way. I think my little link has changed from it now says follow. But if you click more, just a couple buttons over and click on that, it'll say connect. Just, let me know that you've listened to this podcast. You're interested in chatting, even if you're not a B2B SaaS, but you're looking to learn more about customer retention.
Well, we're not a B2B SaaS, but we're going to be working with your company in the next few months to do something very similar to what we just talked about. So
there you go. Right. Absolutely. So do reach out. And again, I have information on my website. So I have a lot of free information around customer retention, churn, anitatoth.ca. And
just for the listener here who may not know how to spell Anita and Toth, it's Nanita. Toth is T as in Thomas, OTH.
Yeah. And then dot is CA.
.ca. Anitatoth.ca. Perfect. Well, Anita, thank you once again, and we'll be in touch real soon to schedule something new.
Sounds awesome, Maureen. Thank you very much. And thank you to the audience for listening. I hope that you went away with something, maybe even just a slight change in perspective, but that's really my hope, that something got through that maybe changed how you think just a little bit.
Well, I know it certainly did me. So thanks again, Anita, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Maureen.
Thank you.
This podcast is dedicated to the memory of Stuart Raven. This is for you, Dad.
Thanks for listening to Get Hired Up with Maureen Farmer. If you enjoyed the show today, please tell a friend and write a review for us. For customized resources to help you get hired up to your next C-level position, visit westgatecareercoaching.com.